Hello, fourth graders. This is Mr. Johnson, and I'm going to be reading the book Lunch Money by Andrew Clements. Chapter 1. Greg Keaton had heaps of talent. He was good at baseball and even better at soccer. He had a clear singing voice and also played the piano. He was a whiz at sketching and drawing, and he did well at school. Reading, science, music, writing, art, math, gym, social studies, the whole deal. But as good as he was at all these things, Greg's greatest talent had always been money. Greg had never taken money lessons. He hadn't had a money tutor or gone to money camp. His talent with money was natural. He has always understood money. He knew how to save it, how to keep track of it, how to grow it, and most of all, how to make it. It takes some kids years and years to figure out everything is worth something. Not Greg. Sitting in the grocery cart by the door of the supermarket, he had watched with sharp brown eyes as his mom dropped a small metal disc into a red machine. Then she turned the crank and a handful of M&Ms had rattled out into her hands. Greg loved the sweet, crunchy taste, but it wasn't the candy that captured Greg's imagination. It was the shiny silver coin. While he was still a skinny preschooler with curly brown hair, Greg had learned to keep his eyes and ears open. One day at breakfast, his biggest brother, Ross, griped, "How come I have to make my bed? I'm just going to mess it up again tonight." His big brother, Edward, chimed in, "Yeah, and cleaning our room every single morning, that's not fair. Besides, there are rooms." His mom answered, "Yes, but your rooms are in my house, and I like my house tidy. So if you want to keep getting your allowance every Friday, get back upstairs and fix the mess." Ross and Edward had grumbled all the way back up to their rooms. Their little brother followed them, and 2 minutes later, Greg had started a housekeeping business, making a bed, 5 cents. Putting dirty clothes in the laundry, 5 cents. Putting clean clothes away, 2 cents. Hanging up used towels, 3 cents each. If both big brothers were complete slobs, and they usually were, Greg earned a little more than $2 a week. So he was certainly not getting rich quick scheme, but that wasn't what Greg was trying to do. He was perfectly happy to get rich slowly, because being patient is a big part of having money talent. Greg understood that a year has 52 weeks. So between the ages of 4 and 6, Greg transformed rumpled sheets, used underwear, smelly socks, soggy towels into beautiful, spendable cash, more than $200. Then his mom shut down his business, insisting that Ross and Edward had to do their own chores. When he was still in nursery school, Greg had taken charge of recycling for the family's trash. He emptied all the waste baskets at least once a week. At the bins out in the garage, he sorted the newspaper magazines from cardboard to the aluminum from steel, and the cardboard and the plastic one from plastic too. As a reward for this service, which took him only 10 minutes a week, Greg was allowed to keep the deposit refunds of all the cans and bottles. That had added up to $4 a month in the cool season and $8 a month during the long, thirsty summer. As a 7 and 8-year-old, Greg had found another way to make money around the house and yard. He shined his dad's and mom's dress shoes for 50 cents a pair. He scrubbed black heel marks off and old wax off the floor tiles in the kitchen for 10 cents a square. He dug dandelions out of the lawn at the rate of 4 for a nickel. And he picked Japanese beetles off the shrubs for a penny a bug. At first, Greg enjoyed simply having the money he made. Cash was fun and interesting all by itself. He liked sorting and stacking the bills, singles, 5s, 10s, 20s, even a few 50s he had gotten from his grandparents for Christmas. He studied the faces of the famous presidents. Alexander Hamilton, too, who he discovered was never president, only the first Secretary of the Treasurer of the United States. He looked at the engraving on the bills with a magnifying glass, studying the tiny face of Abraham Lincoln sitting there on the big square chair inside Lincoln Memorial on the back of every $5 bill. Greg found the coins just as interesting. He loved making the rolls of quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies, stacks and stacks of them, and the gold Sacagawea dollar coins. He didn't put them in rolls. He had collected 27 of them, which he had kept hidden in a sock at the bottom of his dresser. Every once in a while, he'd spread them out on the bed and count them again. Greg also became an amateur coin collector. It was exciting to come up with a mercury dime now and then. He found a couple dozen of those gray pennies that had been used out of steel instead of copper during the Second World War. He had found pennies that were worth $10 or more. And that can get a kid thinking. As nice as it was to have money for himself, Greg quickly learned that it was fun to spend some of it now and then. He would spend it for special things, like his own professional quality soccer ball, or those huge aluminum flashlights with six batteries that can throw a beam of light all the way across the lake at Grandpa's cabin. He bought cool stuff that he really wanted, mostly when it seemed too long to wait for his birthday or Christmas. He bought collectible baseball cards. He also bought a few Beanie Babies and sold them for a nice profit. Sometimes he bought comic books, but only a few, and the only ones that looked like they would become more valuable. Greg loved comics, but he got to read all he wanted for free because his dad collected them. By the time he had gotten into third grade, Greg set himself a goal. He wanted to be rich. He thought it would be fantastic to be able to spend all the money he wanted anytime he felt like it. If he wanted to get the world's fastest computer plus 100 of the best games, no problem. If he wanted a car, a speedboat, a house in the mountains, a home theater system, or even a whole island out in the middle of the Pacific, plus his own seaplane and private crew to fly him there, no problem. Greg was sure that someday he'd be able to get anything he wanted. All he needed was money. And he wasn't that different from his friends. A lot of them seemed to dream about getting rich, and some of them wanted to be famous too. Greg didn't care much about fame. What was the point? Besides, he figured that if he got rich enough, really rich, then fame, this part, would happen automatically. Anyway, but there was one big difference between Greg and most of his friends. He wasn't just dreaming about getting rich. He was working at it. As Greg reached third grade and then fourth, his whole neighborhood had become the land of opportunity. He was thin but wiry, strong to tackle any job that put his mind to. Greg raked and bagged leaves in the fall and again in the spring. He washed cars all summer long in the fall, and in the hot days, he sold lemonade. He shoveled snow and salted icy sidewalks in the winter. Greg became a feeder of the cats, walker of the dogs, and a collector of the mail and newspapers for people on vacation. He swept garages and straightened up messy basements. If people ever decided to throw things away, Greg kept the good stuff for himself and hauled it home for his little corner of the Keaton family garage. And when he had collected enough interesting junk, Greg would dig it all out into the end of the driveway, put up a sign, and hold a sale. Neighborhood money filled Greg's pocket. the way rain fills puddles. For example, consider that Greg earned just from shoveling snow. He had 8 customers with 2 blocks of his house, and every time it snowed, he shoveled the front walks for a flat rate of $10. The winter of 3rd grade, it snowed 6 times, and in the winter of 4th grade, it snowed 5 times. 11 snowfalls times 8 customers equals 88 shovel sessions times $10 for each one equals $880, which isn't a lot of money to a 9th grader. $880 is a lot of money to anyone. It had taken Greg a long time to become the family banker. If his mom and dad were running late for a movie on Saturday night, Greg was happy to lend them $20 as long as they signed his little record book and promised to repay the money. And his parents got special treatment. They didn't have to pay Greg's usual lending fee. After all, they didn't charge him for food that he ate or for the safe warm bed that he slept in every night. So that seemed fair. But his 2 brothers had to pay the regular rates. If his older brother needed extra $5 to get to a new baseball glove in time to break it in for the Babe Ruth tryouts, Greg was happy to lend the money, as long as Edward signed the book and promised to pay back the $5 1 week later, plus a 50-cent fee. And Greg got to keep the old mitt as part of the deal, because a used baseball glove might be worth something at the next driveway sale. And if Ross just had to have the hot new CD the instant it arrived in the music store, he knew his little brother would be happy for a fee. Both Ross and Edward made fun of Greg's money time schemes. They called him Scrooge or Mr. Cashman, Old Moneybags, some other nicknames too. Still, whenever they needed money, they knew they had. Whenever they needed money, they knew they had. They would always. Let me start that over. Whenever they needed money, they knew they would always be welcome to the First Family Bank of Greg. One Thursday, shortly after Greg had finished 4th grade, his dad pulled up a reference book off the shelf in the computer room. Along with the information he had been looking for, he found 12 $5 bills tucked in the pages. Only one person in the family could have owed that money. So at bedtime that night, he told Greg what he had found. Greg sat up in his bed. "You put that back, right?" His dad said, "Absolutely. But how about we go to the bank on Saturday morning and open up a savings account? That's where money belongs." Greg had always looked at him suspiciously. "Why?" "Because your money will be safe in the bank, and it'll be there when you need it, like when you go to college." Greg said, "But I can't get my money out before then? Like if I see something I need at a yard sale?" His dad nodded. "You're allowed to get your money anytime you want. But if you take the money out of the bank, then your money won't grow." "Grow?" said Greg. "You mean earn interest, right?" A little surprised, his dad nodded and said, "Right, earn interest. If you put in $100 in the bank and leave it there for 1 year, the bank will add $5 more to it so that you will have $105. That's called earning 5% interest a year. And all that money has to do is sit there. Pretty neat, huh?" Greg thought about it. "So my money just sits there?" his dad said. "Well, actually, the bank will probably lend your money out to other people, and then those people will pay the bank interest for being able to use it, just like the bank pays the $5 of interest so that you can use your money." Greg said, I only get $5 if I let the bank use my $100 for the whole year. That stinks. Because if I spend $2 on lemon juice and sugar and paper cups, and if I sell 30 cups of lemonade that weekend, then in 1 weekend I'll make more money than the bank would pay me in 1 year. That's true, his dad said. Making your own business investments is one way to earn money faster, as long as you make good investments. But if you keep hiding money around the house, it could get lost or stolen. But how about your comic books? Greg asked. You keep your whole collection right here in the house. His dad nodded. True, but I've got an insurance policy on them. It's a special policy on all my valuables. If something happens to my comics, the insurance company will pay me back the money that they're worth. But you can't get an insurance policy on money itself unless you keep it in a bank. So, if our house burned down and you had no money at all, none, then you'd get none back. That got Greg's attention. Next day, Greg had retrieved money from about 30 different hiding places around the house, the yard, and the garage. And on Saturday morning, he had gone to the bank and opened up his own savings account with the first deposit that amazed his dad, more than $3,200. And that wasn't even all of Greg's money. Just most of it. He'd kept a couple $100 at home because Greg already understood that sometimes a business person needs money right away. By age 11, he was as well on his way to be successful, always on the lookout for new money-making opportunities. And then one day, Greg Keaton made the greatest financial discovery of his life. I wonder what that new investment strategy is going to be. You could predict what you think is going to happen in Chapter 2. What do you think that money financial discovery is? And then put it in the comments below. I'll be reading Chapter 2 in another video. I hope you enjoyed this one. Have a good day.